Halifax has a peninsula. Navigating between the peninsula and the mainland during peak hours can be a bit of a nightmare. The isthmus connecting the two is just 2.6 kilometers wide at its narrowest point and is ringed by a grade-separated rail line across its entire length. This effectively acts as a moat, leaving only 5 roadways in total for directly accessing the mainland. From north to south, the Bedford Highway, Bayers Road, Mumford, Chebucto, and Quinpool. Of these, 4 are classified as arterials and 1 is a major collector. Highway 102, which makes it a part of the Bayers Road route, is actually an expressway. None of these paths are directly supported by bike infrastructure, and all of them can be very intimidating for bike commuters trying to get on and off the peninsula. In today's video, I'll be covering a trip from Quinpool Towers on the peninsula to Punch Hit Fitness in Spryfield. The route I'll be using will showcase several pieces of bike infrastructure around the city and demonstrate a low-stress path from Peninsula to Spryfield and to the mainland more generally. As always, I'll be playing a game of +1, -2 along the way. Every time I encounter a piece of bike infrastructure that makes my trip safer or more convenient, I'll add a point. Every time I encounter something that makes my trip less safe or less convenient, I'll take off 2 points. You can keep track of how I think the ride is going by looking at the heads-up display in the bottom right corner. This is the Allen Oak Local Street Bikeway. It shadows the eastern portion of Quinpool Road, allowing commuters to travel west to east or east to west in a relatively quiet and low-stress environment. These speed bumps slow down cars, but I can barely feel them as I ride over. At the next intersection, cars have to turn either left or right onto Oxford, whereas bikes can go straight through. This limits the amount of car traffic you have to interact with on this bikeway. Also, I didn't use it this time, but there's actually a button that cyclists can press to activate the crosswalk, which allows them to effectively veto heavy traffic. This is really important for local street bikeways because you can get stuck effectively not being able to cross major road spaces when there's a lot of traffic during rush hour. Also, this is just a really nice place to bike through. The number of stop signs along this path is a bit silly though. It feels like even though it's a local street bikeway that theoretically prioritizes bike navigation through this area, you're constantly having to stop and make way for car traffic moving between Chebucto and Quinpool. There's no bike-specific crossing button here, and I've definitely during rush hour had to hop off and use the crosswalk just to get through Chebucto. This ramp is probably one of the smoothest transitions between shared road space and bike infrastructure in the city. Nice. These cross rides make getting through this really busy intersection very easy. Not going to take any points off, but just a heads up that some of the intersections along the Bayers Road multi-use path have pretty aggressive drop-offs and very much require you to slow down. I will give it a point though for being extremely well paved and very smooth. It's really easy to bike up this hill on the way back.
Oh.
That's it. That's the end of the Bears Road multi-use path. From here, I am legally, and as indicated by the signage, required to walk my bike. This really sucks. Okay, that's enough of that. This next section is subject to some change. Shortly after I recorded this video, the city started construction on transitioning this neighborhood into being traffic calmed, as well as improving the connections to the Chain of Lakes Trail, which will be coming up in a bit. But for now, I'm just going to review kind of the route as it actually was when I went through it. Be mindful of potholes in this neighborhood. The road surface is in pretty rough shape. This gradient is kind of ridiculous and is basically unbikeable by most people. I'm once again dismounting my bike and waiting for the light to change. For the major connection between the peninsula and Spryfield and places like Clayton Park and Bears Lake, I'm spending a lot of time kind of not on my bike moving. There could be, for instance, cross rides at this intersection. So as I mentioned before, this whole last section where I just mercilessly dinged the route for being terrible in every way imaginable, a lot of that is actually currently under construction, and I'll be putting a video up soon to cover what exactly bike commuters can expect in terms of improvements to this route coming up soon, and also how to detour around all the construction. That'll be coming up pretty soon. The ability of the Chain of Lakes Trail to connect different parts of the city and even areas outside the city is pretty amazing, and I have to give a point for it. I can theoretically follow this and other trails all the way as far south as Lunenburg if I really want to. There are only a few parts where the trail interacts with the road system, and they're very easy to navigate. One point for just being a very pleasant place to cover a lot of distance. Speaking of distance, here's an extra point for being able to travel 2.5 kilometers without seeing a car. This connecting ramp is great. That's the last of the infrastructure for this trip, but what's left is primarily local streets, and to be honest, despite how wide they are, they're usually almost entirely empty whenever I'm here. There's a little hidden trail here that's super useful for connecting two otherwise unconnected neighborhoods. I'm going to spend some amount of time not going through the actual entrance, but trying to go through a weird side entrance for no obvious reason. I don't know why I'm like this.